In 1952, while flying for Laurentian Air Services, for which he ultimately became president and owner, legendary pilot John Bogie became co-founder, first president, and lifelong supporter of the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association. John's prodigious leadership and tireless support of general aviation have benefited Canadian aviation organizations for decades. John Monroe Bogie was born in Brooklyn, New York, on September 6, 1926, to his American father, Robert, and his Canadian mother, Florence. At the age of 6, in a Travel Air 6000 aircraft, John had his first airplane ride, and at age 17, he earned his private pilot license, soon followed by commercial and multi-engine ratings. In the United States Navy in 1944, too young for military flying, he trained as an air gunner for the Second World War, and after the war, John graduated from the University of Vermont. And he purchased an Aeronca Champion in 1946, the first aircraft type he would own. In 1947, a Beechcraft Bonanza Model 35 was purchased for him by his mother to help John pursue his interest in flying. Then, in 1951, John's uncle, Barnett McLaren, hired John to fly as a pilot for his company, Laurentian Air Services Limited, a venture that was started by McLaren with a single Waco aircraft in 1936. Soon John was busy flying charters for lumber companies, sportsmen, and fire patrols from Laurentian's Ottawa base, and in 1952 he was flying charters for Hall's Air Service in Val-d'Or, Quebec, carrying passengers and supplies. In 1953, John returned to fly for Laurentian, subcontracted to Spartan Air Services in the Topographical Survey for Newfoundland. He became aviation manager and chief pilot for Boylan Engineering of Toronto, and from 1959 to 1961, John Bogie flew a Grumman Goose for the company, taking its geologists and prospectors throughout North America and remote areas of Canada, where they discovered gold, copper, asbestos, and iron. The Goose became one of John's favorite aircraft to fly. In 1961, John became Executive Vice President and Director for Laurentian Air Services. At the time, the company was losing money, but when it became profitable again in 1968, he bought the company from his uncle. John diversified Laurentian's activities, serving new territories such as Shefferville, a mining town in Quebec, helping to pioneer the Shefferville area as a destination for sportsmen, providing air services to early outfitters. Eventually, Bogie established his own outfitting subsidiary, Laurentian Ungava Outfitters Limited, as well as Delay River Outfitters Limited, to serve hunting and fishing interests. By the mid-1960s, Laurentian provided services to lumber, mining, fishing, and hunting interests, as well as to governments in Ontario and Quebec. An aircraft engine overhaul shop was set up in Ottawa, and from the early 1970s until 1975, Laurentian maintained an office and base in Shefferville, as well as in Montreal. With Laurentian, John had begun buying used de Havilland Beaver aircraft around the world for resale in Canada. The de Havilland DHC-2 Beaver was another of his favorite aircraft. In late 1972, John outbid competitors to buy 64 Beavers of the U.S. Army that were put up for auction in France. He bought them all and shipped them to Canada, where with partner Colin McWatt, he formed a new company, BM Aviation, to rebuild the Beavers and sell the aircraft in Canada. At Lachute, Quebec, they were overhauled, refurbished, and painted to the customer's choice, processing 1 beaver per month until 1978. In 1952, with Ottawa pilot Margaret Carson, John Bogie co-founded the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association, known as COPA, to represent aircraft owners and pilots. John was elected as chairman and continued his lifelong support of COPA, seeing it grow to over 17,000 across Canada today. With COPA, John Bogie stepped down as president in 1956, then served as treasurer for 25 years. In 1992, he was named as an honorary director and life member of COPA. John was also instrumental in the formation of the Canadian Business Aviation Association, which started as an offshoot of COPA. In 1966, John was elected as a director of the Air Transport Association of Canada and served in that capacity for 6 years. By the time Laurentian Air Services was dissolved in 2004, John Bogie had been associated with the company for half a century. He was known for his management skills, and his company was known for its training of employees, maintenance of aircraft, and opportunities for advancement. While he was in failing health, a special reception was held for John in Ottawa, attended by family, friends, and colleagues to celebrate his long career and contributions to aviation, and to install him as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. John died on April 5, 2018, but the story of John and his Laurentian Air Services lives on in a book appropriately named For the Love of Flying. Mr. John Munro Bogie was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in Ottawa on February 10, 2018.